So I've been thinking about thought of the day, and I was remembering how when I joined Rotary 25 years ago or thereabouts, it was quite different. It was much more serious. And that was fine. It was usually led by our two ministers, and their thoughts were good. I liked it. Now the thought is sometimes a funny story, and that's fine with me too. I think humor is the most undervalued human attribute. We don't take it seriously. Laughter, provided it's kind laughter, it clears the mind, brings us together, helps us to learn, and to be brave. It comforts us. Always, everywhere, people love to laugh. Babies laugh almost as soon as they can smile. The best teachers and preachers use humor to drive a point or to bring people together. We think of Greek drama as all dark and tragic, but in 400 BC, the playwright Aristophanes wrote Lysistrata, a play making fun of Athenian men's lust for war, with a plot involving the women's resistance by refusing sex to their warlike husbands. It filled the theater with 10,000 people, and it's still performed today all over the world. Chaucer's pilgrims on the way to Canterbury told bawdy stories, and Shakespeare included humor even in his tragedies. Soldiers in World War I sang funny songs in the trenches, and so did people in bomb shelters in World War II. And in 1944, I heard American GIs singing popular songs with a lot of invented, risque words as they left for the Normandy landings. You may know some of those songs. No. We need humor, most of all the ability to laugh at ourselves. I don't think Hitler or Stalin could do that. I'd love to end with a funny story, but I'm not like Marty Plone, our wonderful storyteller. As my family knows too well, every time I try, I forget the punchline.
Excited to make this introduction to you all. And although I didn't have a chance to talk to Chief Harris about anything before today, I told him not to worry, I'd just make it up. So, Chief Michael Harris was born and raised in Modesto. He spent 20 years on the Modesto Police Department before he applied for his job here and was chosen over almost 40 people applying for that job. He's a good communicator. He's amiable and friendly. He's got a real eagerness for his job. He loves Livermore. And I'm not going to take any more of his time, but I'm just going to present to you Chief Harris.
Thank you. That was a fantastic introduction. If you made it up, I was going to say it's even better. So, no, my pleasure to be here with you today. And as you can see, I brought backup. And already introduced Officer Ishmael and Officer Martin. And we're going to talk about homelessness today and what the police department's doing and answer any of your questions, that type of thing. And it's one of the questions that I'm most often asked about when I'm out in the community and emails and things like that that I get. So I thought it'd be good to come and talk with you guys about it and let you know what we're doing. It is certainly a challenge. I have a few notes here I want to pull up. When you contrast the issue with homelessness with our mission, which is service with honor and protection with purpose. Okay, so we want to serve our community, and that's everybody in our community, and we want to protect our community, and that includes everybody in our community. And so this issue I find people are a lot of times either completely on one side or completely on another side. And as with any issue, that's usually not very good. We need to try and come together. So, or come more towards center. And so we serve everybody, and that includes our most needy. And honestly, that's something that Rotary is all about as well, is serving the needy. But protecting our community and maintaining the quality of life that we have is also in our mission. And when you look at any population, the general population, or as you break down certain segments of a population, there are going to be those that commit crime or are engaged in doing harm to the community in some way. So we as the police department, as I said, have the duty then to intervene and try and protect the community. So how we go about doing that is where it really gets kind of challenging sometimes, because we get pulled in many directions on this issue. Now, specific to homelessness, it appears to be, and I believe it is, increasing. A problem that's growing not only in Livermore, or maybe even less in Livermore than other places, but certainly in California. So you may be asking or wondering, why that is. What is it that seems to? What's the different variable in play here that seems to be making this problem worse? Well, some of those things are, as you may already know, rising housing costs. The housing in the Bay Area, especially, but California is just outrageous, and many families are one financial crisis away from one paycheck away from being homeless. So that certainly contributes to it. Substance abuse is a significant driver of homelessness. Folks that become addicted to a particular substance and then for lack of a better term, become a slave to that. And many have been through the criminal justice system, or family members have tried to intervene and assist, but they're stuck. And they're stuck in this process right now, and they're not in a place where they can make a positive decision for themselves to lift themselves out of that yet. And so they're caught in that. The other is mental illness. So a significant number of homeless people, suffer from mental illness. So the general population is no different. So, but folks with mental illness seem to be more apt to find themselves on the street and in need of assistance. And so we often interact there. Domestic abuse, and as I already said, financial crises can also play into it. So as we try to look at this issue, we realize as a police department and hopefully as a community that we are not going to arrest our way out of this problem. And we, the police department, are not the sole stakeholder involved in leading this charge, right? We certainly are on the front lines and hopefully really contributing to help, but we're not going to do it by ourselves. But as I look at our individual mission and as the leader of the department to try and set strategy and a tone for how we go about this, I try to communicate both internally and externally that it's important for us not to conflate compassion with a lack of enforcement of the law and vice versa. So those two camps I was talking about, some people feel like if they ever see an officer interacting with a homeless person that we don't have compassion for that person, and then some people think if we have compassion and try and assist that we're not doing our job enforcing the law. So what we have to do is recognize the difference and proceed accordingly. So we will always remember that homelessness is not a crime in and of itself, that we're committed to working with service providers to implement strategies that end chronic homelessness, And also, here's the thing, that we will not turn a blind eye to illegal activity from any person, and that and includes if someone is not housed, if they're committing a crime. So, for all the reasons I mentioned about homelessness and its increase, we've certainly seen it here since, like you said, I've been here for 5 years, and so about 3 years ago, it really did seem to start kind of spiking up. And the way our system works, the 911 system, the not even 911, just calls for services. Patrol officers, a certain number are sent out into the community in their police cars, and they respond to calls, or they proactively look for activity that's occurring. So we saw a higher number of calls each year. At the halfway point of this year, 2018, just did a little check, and we've responded to over 1,200 calls relating to homelessness in some form, just in the first half of the year. So our patrol officers were the ones being sent to deal with these things. So as you probably all know, relationships are key, expertise is key. Is this working? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Expertise in an area is key. So I wanted to take it away from sort of the general practitioner kind of to some people that have some expertise in it. So we developed a new unit called the Homeless Liaison and Policing Team. And we had one officer assigned at the beginning of the year, and then as of July 1st, I was able to add a second. And these are these two officers here. Now, so what the plan is, and the idea here is that these two officers, this is their primary job. This is their focus. They go out into the community, they respond to these calls, or they proactively go and engage in outreach with the homeless community to try and assist them. They build relationships with the service providers in the entire region. They try to connect those folks with those service providers to lift them out of homelessness if possible. They know, just like it is with, let's say, the general population, that there's certain people that are involved in criminal conduct. It's the same with the homeless population. There's a certain percentage that are involved in criminal conduct. They will know this population and know the difference and act accordingly. So we want to also, what's important about the homeless response, and probably the thing that I get called about the most, is encampments. So that's someone that's building a temporary shelter, or actually sometimes semi-permanent shelter in a location where they're living on public or private property where they don't have permission to be. And these can get pretty extensive, and they can become a problem. They can become a public health hazard. You're going to see a few photos there. So these officers respond to that, and so we have tools in our tool belt to try and clean these things up and move people along. And the key to that is, there's a whole legal thing that comes into place as far as posting an encampment, how long they have to clean it up, keeping the property for a period of time. So it's not like we can just get a call, go out, grab everything up, throw it away. We wouldn't want to do that, because these are this people's property. So there's a lot involved in it, and they're out there on the front lines every day. I wanted to bring them with you, and I wanted them to introduce themselves to you and talk to you a little bit about what it is they do, and then certainly open it up for questions. But as I hand it over to them, before I do, this unit, as we thought about creating it, first of all, let me just say I am just privileged to work with the best people that I know. I mean, the people in the police department are just fantastic. And these two gentlemen are no different. When we asked, this is a voluntary assignment, so we put it out to everybody and we asked, who wants to do this? How's that sound for a job description? And they volunteered. And these guys are cops. Okay, they're both longtime members of the SWAT team. They've been around for a long time, but they're fantastic public servants, and they want to make a difference in the community, and they volunteered So I appreciate that very much. And they also brought their toys, which now that they've seen Dr. Shirley's scooter, they're going to want one of those scooters too. Maybe a 4x4 version. But anyway, without further ado, I want to introduce and let you guys take turns introducing yourself, talking a little bit about. Come on over here. So I don't know. Oh, you got a microphone. Okay, you can split the screen.
Hello. Is this thing on? Yeah. All right. I'm Dave Martin. I was born and raised here in Livermore. I've been an employee of the Livermore Police Department for a little over 19 years now. Thank you, Chief Scott. And so I've had many jobs within the police department, like Chief Harris said. I'm a member of the SWAT team. I'm a firearms instructor. I was a field training officer, and I started doing this homeless thing unofficially about 4 years ago as a supplemental job to regular patrol duties, and I've been doing it full time since July. But for the past 16 years as a police officer is really when I started working with the homeless. I realized that the homeless, they have good information for you. If you really want to know what's going on in the streets, you go chat with the homeless, and I got to know a lot of their stories. I got to know a lot of what led them there, what their personal experiences were, and I was able to help them throughout my career. Matt?
Just a little thing on the PowerPoint here. If it wasn't interesting, I wouldn't take a picture of it. So this isn't all the camps we deal with. This is the more extreme. Some of these you may recognize from the trails and such. But this has been over a year's span of photos. Again, Matt Ishmael. I've been with the department for 8 years now. I'm on the SWAT team with Dave. I'm also a force options instructor. I was doing the homeless liaison stuff for a year prior to doing it full time. I was assigned in January. They said they're going to get us some cool toys to go along with it. So I was like, oh, sounds good. Let's do it. No, I'm a fixer. There's a lot of people out there that don't fit into that criminal element that the chief had mentioned, and they need real help, and it's hard for us to get the correct services out to them if we don't know where they are, if we're not constantly coming into contact with them. So that was a big deal on why I wanted this position. I wanted to be out there. I wanted to see what we can do, what we can take charge of to start managing this. One of the biggest things we have is encampments. That it's a process, like the chief said. We can't just go out there and throw everyone's stuff away. We go out there, we try and advise them multiple times before we actually start cleaning up camps. Some get cleaned up quicker than others because of where they're located or who established that encampment, because they've been warned multiple times prior. But we utilize a service. We usually give them at least 24 hours notice to remove their property, and then that company, it's called Crime Scene Cleaners, comes out and they clean up the encampment. They look for property of value or whatever that might look like, and secure it at a facility that we have designated for that, and the rest of it they dispose of properly. We work with Abode, City Serve. We have a couple different resources out there that we're trying to further our relationships with, some of the churches and all that, to see what actual resources we can offer these individuals. Sometimes there's this balance we got to find for those resources. Sometimes they don't do enough. They, like our churches, they give out food and they give out clothing and all that, but we want something more, something that's going to be getting these individuals off the street, something that's going to guide them to a job, guide them to housing, whatever it be. That's a big part of our day-to-day, is going out and talking with individuals. What do you need? What is it that's going to get you off the street? What got you on the street? And with us, me and Dave, we've established a rapport. We have a good idea of how to talk with these individuals, where I can get a life story from anyone in 15 minutes. So based on that, we contact our service providers and be like, this individual needs X, Y, Z as far as we know. What can you do?
So, and like Matt said, you look at a lot of these pictures, and we're taking a picture of these folks, and they're smiling. They're happy to see us. And that's kind of a hard relationship to build, because a lot of these people have a lot of experience with law enforcement that's not so positive. So when we walk into the camp, they generally thinking, all right, here's the cops. We're probably going to jail, right? So we have to very softly work in what we need to do into the conversation. And obviously if they're committing crime, if they have a warrant or something like that, we need to take care of our primary job, which is law enforcement, but we also have found that we can do it in a way to still keep their trust and allow us to work with them to help find them resources. Even if we do need to arrest them, when they get out, they know they can come right back to us for resources. They know that our primary goal is to try to get them out of homelessness. The only cure for homelessness is to get homeless people housed. If everybody was housed, we wouldn't have homelessness. So that's the ultimate goal: get people jobs and get people housed. I think we left a lot of time for questions, because last time we did this, there was a lot of questions. So, and this is a larger group. So we can go straight into that if you guys like. You have any questions? Go ahead, Mr.
Use the mic.
Chief said that homelessness is not a crime per se. But can you differentiate between vagrancy and loitering, and when it becomes a law enforcement issue?
So we have a municipal code that says camping on public grounds is unlawful. However, I don't know how current you guys stay up with legal trends, but the Ninth Circuit Court just ruled that camping on public grounds is not unlawful, because essentially there's nowhere for them to go. So we're going to have to work on revamping that municipal code. So homelessness is not a crime. Camping on public grounds, still not a crime. So we deal with trespassing on private property. The loitering, we can move people along. We use a lot of municipal codes and LARPD codes to our advantage. You can't smoke on First Street. You can't have an open container anywhere in the city. You can't smoke in a city park. So we use that to move folks along, because they want to smoke cigarettes and they want to be able to drink where they are. And you know what? If they say, well, I'm going to stay here, I'll take the ticket or whatever, I promise I won't smoke or drink anymore. Well, that's fine. They're just like anybody else. They can hang out in the public parks. Don't cause any problems.
Something to think about. Those individuals holding the signs that you see and all that, asking for money and all that, they're not all homeless. A lot of them are just trying to get an extra buck.
Yeah.
I went up to them, I'm like, hey, what do I need to do to get you off the street? And I'm not homeless. It's, Christmas around the corner. I need some extra money for whatever it be. So that's just something to think about as far as that goes.
Mike, you mentioned different classes of homelessness due to just underpaid, they couldn't afford the home payments, out to mental illness and drug addiction. Do you have some idea of how many in each of these classes we have here in Livermore?
Well, we do a homeless survey every couple of years, the county does. And actually, we as a city are looking at supplementing that to get more detail than the county does when that happens. And so we can get some of that information, but it's all self-disclosed information. So, it has its variance, but that's a real tough thing to do. But we have supposedly a little. What was the latest count, guys? 200 and something.
Yeah, around 250.
Around 250 homeless in Livermore.
A little over 100 unsheltered.
Yeah. What's
Does
that?
that include students?
That's
Yeah.
everyone that we've counted. Yeah. But of that, so there's a term called sheltered and unsheltered. So folks that are living out in a camp in the weather, that's unsheltered. And then there's homeless that have cars or trailers, or they go from house to house for periods of time and that kind of thing. So about 100 unsheltered. And these guys would be better suited to answer this question than me, but of those 100, there's probably 20 to 30% that are the main ones that we are always like getting calls on, dealing with over and over. And they're using drugs and they're committing crimes and they're breaking into cars and that kind of thing. What's really frustrating for us and for me, I'll just speak for myself, but I know I've talked with them before too, so I know is when you have someone that's mentally ill. And I think you can almost all see that, right? The same person out at the same place, maybe they're talking to themselves, or there's obviously something happening there. The problem is, the state of California closed the state hospitals in the 60s, and so all we can do is stop and try and determine if that person appears to be a danger to themselves or a danger to others. And if so, we can take them for an evaluation at John George over the hill. But really, at the most, they're going to be kept for a couple of days, and that's even very rare that even happens. They're not given any follow-up. They're determined not to be, and they're just sent back out. So they just live on the street, and that is really a frustrating thing, because those folks, there needs to be, in my opinion, a court for this, where there's a conservatorship issue where we can evaluate with the help of a doctor and that type of thing to help people help themselves. And get them committed for a period of time where they can get the help they need, and then eventually, hopefully, into a home on their own. But a lot of people need help, and it's really sad to see them out there wasting away. But it's the current reality. Yeah.
Of the homeless that you all interact with, what fraction would you say on a long-term basis actually escape homelessness?
I don't really have a fraction for you.
No, I'd
or a
say
percentage.
since I've started really keeping track of the homeless, near the beginning of my career, it's probably more than 50%. Yeah, it's really not too bad. Some people are homeless longer than others, but at some point, most of the people just kind of disappear. They get taken by families. They get too old. There's some kind of conservatorship where someone has to take them in. The short term, it's much smaller than that, but over the course of my career, like less than 50% of the people I've dealt with 10 years ago are still on the street.
I'll just add to that real quick. There are so many people that want to help on this topic, and organizations. There's even ways for people, if they're about to get kicked out, that need rent money, places to go to get rent money before they become homeless, right? To help them. If there's families, and that's such, there's many shelters for families, or not many. There's several in the area for families and children. It's the single males a lot of times that there is no space for, and there's a refuge, homeless refuge during the winter, so that's about to open up November through April. If it's raining, forecast to be raining or below 40 degrees, the churches open up, those rotate. But for people that want help, there is a lot of help, and there's people willing to house them, and we have vouchers for hotel rooms and all these types of things to get people off the street. But there is, I will say, there is a percentage of the folks out there that resist that. They want to be left alone. They don't want that. They want to be where they're at.
Chief,
Yeah.
do the homeless people, turn the question around, what's the percentage of arrests, misdemeanors, or whatever, that the homeless do compared to the normal population of Livermore?
Wow. I don't have that statistic, but I wouldn't even want to really guess, because I don't know how close I would be. But I'll just say we arrest a number of folks that identify themselves as transient. We ask the address, and they say transient. Now I don't know what that means as far as if they're technically homeless or they're not getting mail somewhere or they're staying. But there is a high percentage of folks that are engaged, like I said, in substance abuse, and substance abuse leads to other criminal activity to support it. And so it's I would say a high number of people that we arrest. I don't know the percentage, but it's a lot. And how would you add to that, or could you, or no?
I don't have a good number for you. I couldn't attest to that. There's a lot of crimes that come with homelessness because they need things, right? They don't have money necessarily to purchase them or anything like that. So there are some like larceny, thefts and such that are more prevalent in that area, but different crimes throughout the city. It's hard to give a number to that one. I'm sorry.
I have two brief questions. One is that it seems to me you see some people, the same people downtown. One in particular, I can think of a couple that I see all the time. The gentleman over at Long's with a heavy coat and long hair and a beard. And there's a lady who has, usually her head is almost bald, then the hair grows out. I'm talking, pushing a shopping cart. Seems to me that this would be a good human interest story. Maybe some of you know who she is or how she got there. I see her, I've been seeing her for years. She used to sleep in the post office. The other question is, it's apparent to me, I believe it must be true, that some of these people don't take advantage of the benefits that are available through food stamps, welfare programs. The other day, a bunch of us worked at the Veterans, the East Bay stand down over at the fairgrounds, and I was an ambassador, so I went out and talked to everybody. I'm a retired Navy officer. So this gentleman says, hey, guess what? I just got Social Security. Now, God knows how long he was going around not knowing that he was eligible for Social Security. So the second question is, how many of these people are taking advantage of the benefits that are available through the government?
Yeah, so I'm sure they do know. I know who you're describing there, and that's one of those frustrating cases I was just mentioning. And that is critical, is case management, an outreach worker, there is a social worker aspect to this that is missing that I'm looking to fill. You need to have that role to do just what you're saying, which is to get to know the client, to understand their background, and to have the skill to connect them with those things. So we want to be able to hand these people off when they're ready to someone like that, and to help them go get their license, to take them to the appointment, to get Social Security, to help them apply. Just the things that the East Bay Stand Down did, the things you're talking about, those kinds of things. We need a case manager, we need a social worker, and we need a mental health clinician in the field with us all the time.
Right here.
So we have time for two,
We have
possibly
two more.
three questions.
Yes.
All right, I think I already know the answer to this one, but the question is, where do these people pee? And why doesn't the city provide, in some of the larger places, porta potties?
So I do know the city is looking at some alternatives for that. Right now, like you said, you know the answer to it. I think we all know the answer to where it's happening and all that. We do our best to manage that. Like I said, the city is looking at alternatives right now as far as being able to place bathroom facilities and such for that need. The city has recognized that need, and they're trying to address it.
I think Carolyn Siegfried had her hand up.
Oh, I've got it back here and then.
Sonia then, yeah.
I just wanted to give you some kudos. I have a nephew who was on the street for a number of years, and you couldn't get him off no matter what because he didn't want to give up the alcohol. And he ran into Officer Ishmael a number of times. He'd been picked up and put away. And he is now in rehab because of Officer Ishmael. I just happened to text him and ask him who was the last officer who arrested him. I just want to say that this constant contact with these homeless does work. And some people who are really diehard street people who don't want to be helped eventually, do get help.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's so important because I want to. The term "tough love" applies in this situation. Folks need to be, if they're alcoholic, drug addicted, whatever the case may be, we want to be able to take them to jail and have them stay there long enough to dry out and make a decision then once they're sober for their best interest. They're not going to make that decision in the current state. But the way it works now is there's a revolving door, and so we're working with the DA and the public defenders and everybody else. We want to identify these folks that are most at risk and get them the time in jail for them to dry out and work with probation and that kind of thing. So that and that's a story that relevant to that. So was there one more? Yes.
So very much related to what you just said there. If they are in jail, they're able to dry out. What's the availability of residential rehab centers to help them get off of their addictions?
Not near enough. Not near enough. And it's disappointing because State Proposition 47, which was passed several years ago, reduced felony drug crimes to misdemeanors and other larceny crimes to misdemeanors, and the savings of the incarceration was supposed to go back to programs. And I don't know where that money's at. I don't know where the programs are. There's no leverage anymore. So you used to have leverage on someone, hey, this is a felony unless you go to this program. Okay, I'll go to the program. And now there's no leverage. And so that's another thing that's adding to this entire problem, but I won't even go into that.
Okay, so I hate to cut this off because I know there's still a lot of questions out there. And would you gentlemen stay for a few minutes after and answer more questions? I think, pardon? Okay, so before you go, I want to personally thank all three of you for coming today, bringing the bikes.
Arrest her.
Lock her up! Lock her up!
I think someone at the bandstand opening, someone suggested that, and they didn't want to cuff me. So anyway, Mike, the tradition here is you get a bottle of wine or a bottle of olive oil, and so it's your choice.
Give it to us.
Okay, all right. Yeah, okay. So then you have one more task here. Thank you, Mike, to draw the winning team.